Dearest, darlingest new viewers and subscribe-sicles. Well, that didn't work. Hello and welcome to the first Wicked episode of Story Bakes with Katie Sue. I have to say I was kind of relieved when I heard that Wicked is going to be a 2-part movie because I can do a bake for Glinda now, and then I'll have a year to figure out how to make a bake defy gravity. The design inspiration comes from the trailers and promotional images from the upcoming movie with an all-pink cupcake, including Swiss meringue buttercream piped in ruffly swirls for the skirt of her gown and a hard candy star for her wand. It's been several years since I've seen Wicked, but only a couple of weeks since I sang some of the songs in a karaoke room, so I'm about 62% confident that they don't mention much in the way of specific foods. For the flavors, raspberry is the main theme, mostly because it's the right color. There's raspberry cupcake, a raspberry-rosé ganache filling, because I think Glinda would be a rosé lady. The frosting is raspberry and white chocolate, because both Glinda and white chocolate are saccharine. And the star candy has a champagne flavoring, because nobody is as bubbly as Glinda. Oh wait, wrong musical. Let's just get to the baking. I've only made hard candy once when I made a shard cake for a friend's birthday a few years ago, and I've never used a mold, so here's hoping this goes well. I got this silicone mold from Molds from the Ashes on Etsy. I'll put a link to it in the description below. It came in this neat box. I was able to request a custom size and number of cavities, and Jill was great. 10 out of 10. Some people say to lightly grease molds, others say you don't need to, but I decided it couldn't hurt, so I used a paper towel to swipe the cavities with the lightest possible coating of vegetable oil. Then some pink sanding sugar is going in the center, and we're all set. I'm combining 55 grams of water, 70 grams of corn syrup, and 150 grams of sugar in a pot, and then cooking it until it reaches 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and be forewarned that this can take longer than you think it will. When it reaches 300, I'm taking it off the heat and stirring in a few drops of champagne flavoring oil. I wasn't sure how strong this was, so I erred on the side of caution. But if I was making this again, I'd add probably twice as much as the flavor didn't really come through. Working quickly, I'm going to pour the candy into the molds, a process that wasn't without a bit of mess despite my best efforts. And here, I ran into a snafu. See, I'd made this the day before everything else in case I needed to remake it, and at this point, I thought I would have to. The candy was too thick to flow into all of the points, but then I had a brainwave. I turned the oven on to 280 degrees Fahrenheit, then set the mold in it for a few minutes. Using a cookie scribe, I poked the softened candy into the points, returning the mold to the oven whenever the candy started to set too much. And very thankfully, once the candy set, these came out of the molds beautifully. The only thing was that the pink sugar didn't stick as much as I thought it would, and so I had my second, and not as successful, hard candy brainwave. I added a bit more of the pink sugar, then used a kitchen torch to try to melt it. Don't use parchment paper, Katie, are you crazy? This didn't really help the pink sugar stick all that well, and only ended up melting the candy a little, which actually makes it look a little more like Glinda's wand. Yeah, we'll go with that. Nobody likes a greasy cupcake bottom, and I wasn't sure how these were going to turn out, so I put a little rice in the bottom of half of the cupcake tin as an experiment, and then placed the pink cupcake liners. For the cupcake batter, I'm first whisking together 165 grams of cake flour with 1 teaspoon of baking powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and half a teaspoon of salt. For the wet ingredients, I'm whisking together a 1/4 cup of sour cream with a 1/4 cup of milk. Next, I'm creaming together 113 grams of softened unsalted butter with 185 grams of sugar. Once it's light and fluffy, I'm adding 2 egg whites, one at a time. These were actually ones I had left over from making pastry cream a few months ago and had frozen. 1 egg white weighs about 30 grams, so I measured out 60 grams of the thawed egg whites and used that. I'm going to alternate mixing in the dry and wet ingredients in 3 rounds, then mix in a 1/3 cup of raspberry puree that I reduced down by about half, and then 1 teaspoon of vanilla and a bit of fuchsia food coloring, which was a bit more purple than I thought it would be. I'm scooping the batter into my prepared cupcake pan, then baking them at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 25 minutes, or until the tops spring back or a toothpick inserted in the center comes out clean. Then I'm setting these aside to cool, and it turns out that I didn't really need the rice in the bottom, but you know what they say, better to be safe than greasy. To be honest, I'm not much of a wine drinker, but I am a sucker for packaging, and I think this rosé fits with the Glinda theme. To 175 grams of white chocolate, I'm adding 75 grams of a mixture of rosé that I reduced by half and more of the reduced raspberry puree that I used for the cupcakes. I'm letting this sit for 5 minutes before stirring together, starting from the center. To speed up the setting process, I'm using an ice pack, stirring constantly until it sets to a pipeable consistency. I've heated 120 grams of egg whites and 120 grams of sugar to 165 degrees Fahrenheit over a water bath, and I'm whipping this until the sides of the bowl aren't hot anymore. Then I'm adding 170 grams of softened unsalted butter a little at a time, fully incorporating each piece before adding another. I had taken more of the raspberry puree and reduced it down until it was a thick paste, then added this to the buttercream. I wanted to add as little extra liquid as possible and get some concentrated raspberry flavor in. Next, I'm switching to the paddle attachment and mixing in 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 75 grams of melted and cooled white chocolate, and a few drops of fuchsia food coloring. And we're good to go. Alright, let's put it all together. First, I'm using a large piping tip to cut out the centers of the cupcakes, and this is an excellent opportunity to taste the cake. I'll try one more just to make sure. The raspberry flavor is there, but I wish it was a little stronger. I'd try adding more reduced raspberry puree next time, maybe some raspberry flavoring, or some powdered freeze-dried raspberries. Then I'm transferring the raspberry-rosé ganache to a piping bag before filling the centers. To get the swirly ruffles of Glinda's gown, I ordered 4 new piping tips to try, and it was seriously like opening presents for Christmas. I got an Ateco 888, then a few Russian sphere tips, numbers 469, 471, and 481. After looking them over, I decided to try all of them except for 469. I filled the 3 pastry bags with the buttercream, and I'm also very excited to have some new piping bags after having seams split and bags rupture several times. First, I'll use the Russian sphere 471 tip, which is this wavy one. I'm twisting the bag back and forth to create the swirly ruffles, and I'm pretty happy with this one, though they do end up with a hole in the middle. Next is the 481 tip, and I think the raspberry puree made the buttercream not entirely smooth, and it didn't pipe evenly. I'll save this one for another bake. Now I have the Ateco 888, and I had a harder time getting the effect that I was after, but this would be great for swirls. I transferred the remaining buttercream to the bag with a 471 tip and finished off the cupcakes. I had enough frosting for 10 of the cupcakes and only had 8 candy stars, so we're doing great. For decoration, I'm first sprinkling on a few pink sugar pearls, then adding a bit of pink sanding sugar and silver sanding sugar for that glitz and sparkle that is so Glinda. After they're all dressed up, I'm topping it with a champagne sugar star, and these cupcakes would fit in even the most swankified place in town. Let's see how it tastes. Here we go. Raspberry cupcakes with raspberry rosé ganache, raspberry white chocolate Swiss meringue buttercream, and champagne hard candy. I'm going to set the candy aside for now. I did try some of it when I was making it, and like I said earlier, it could have used more of the flavoring. Just be careful eating these, they're very pokey. Let's see that cross-section now. The fuchsia food coloring I got leaned a little more toward purple than I'd like, but overall I'm not really unhappy with the colors. It's still a strong pink, and that's all that really matters. Now for a taste. If you like super sweet frostings, this isn't the one for you, despite the addition of the white chocolate. I'm not sure I get a lot of white chocolate flavor, but it lends a creamy sweetness, and the raspberry is there, but again, not super strong. I love the lightness and silkiness of Swiss meringue buttercream, so overall, this is a win for me. The ganache is interesting. You can definitely taste the rosé, and I'm not sure that I like the wine flavor here, and might have preferred a straight raspberry ganache, but I'm glad I tried it. The cake part is soft and moist with a soft raspberry flavor and a slight tang from the sour cream. Overall, I really like it. I'd change up the ganache, but the cake and the buttercream are delicious, even if the raspberry flavor could be punched up a little bit. Hit the like button if you want to see more wicked bakes, and be sure to check in a year or so for some as yet unplanned but sure to be dazzling, gravity-defying alphabet bake. Subscribe and hit the notification bell if you're so inclined, and let me know in the comments what characters, shows, or movies I should turn into bakes next. Thanks for watching.